Hi there, this video is just about the JavaScript for loop. It's just going to be really sort of basic video just to explain what is going on with the syntax with a for loop, how to type it out, and just to explain what each little bit means. I do timestamps in the video, so you can just skip to where exactly you need to get to. But yeah, the first part will be just I'll type it out, I'll do a console log, and you can just see how it works. And then the second part, I will just explain what's going on. So I'll break down the syntax and just sort of explain what each part of the for loop is doing. And yeah, the end will just be, I guess, a screenshot of the actual for loop. So yeah, I'll type it out. Let's make a start. So we want to start off just by typing for, and then we'll have our brackets, and let's do let I is equal to 0, semicolon, I is less than or equal to 5, well let's do 10, and then we will increment I by 1, and then we will just console log I. And then what you can see here in the terminal, it's literally just looping through I 0 to 10. So how is this happening? Let me just break down the syntax for you just to explain. So what we've got is I'll just rewrite the for loop at the bottom, and then I'll go over the syntax. So we've got our first part, which is let I equal to 0. And what this is doing is it's like the initialization of the for loop. So it will execute one time before the loop starts, and it will just basically like initialize the counter variable. So here it will run once when the for loop begins, and we're just saying let I equal to 0, or we could just say let counter equal to 0 just to explain, just so you can sort of see what's going on here. So this will happen as soon as the for loop starts. We'll just say let counter equal to 0. And then the second part is like the condition. So before each iteration or each loop, the condition will either evaluate to true or false. If it evaluates to true, then it will loop once more. If it's false, then the loop finishes and it exits. So for this for loop, the condition would be counter is less than or equal to 10. And again, this condition will keep on going through each loop. And if it's true, the loop will happen. If it's false, the loop finishes. So if it's true, say that it will be true straight away. So at the beginning, we're doing let counter is equal to 0. So then the second part will happen, and counter is equal to 0. So counter is less than or equal to 10. So that is true. So the loop will happen, which will be in our loop, for example, console log. Let's just do that as counter, so we can see the difference in the terminal. So it's true. So our console log will do counter, and then whatever counter is equal to. So the first time this loop happens, the counter will equal to 0. And then once this bit here has run, we will do our third part, which is the iteration. So this is executed after each iteration of the loop, and it will either increment or just basically update our counter variable. So in this example, we will increment counter by 1. And then the loop will happen again. So it won't do this bit here. That happens one time and one time only. So our second part, our condition stage, will happen again. And it will say, okay, is counter less than or equal to 10? Well, we've just increase the counter by 1. So at the moment counter is 1, and counter is 1 is less than or equal to 10. So it will do console.log counter 1, and then it will do the third part. So it will do the iteration part again, and it will say, okay, let's increase counter by 1. So now counter is 2, and again, I won't do it all the way, but this basically this second part will happen, and it will keep on looping until I guess until we get to say counter is equal to 9, and then it will do console.log 9. It will increase counter by 1, so counter is 10. Counter is less than or equal to 10, so it will happen once more. So we'll do counter 10, and then we will increase counter by 1 once more, so now counter is 11. So this condition will happen again, so counter, which is 11 now, less than or equal to 10. That's false. Counter is no longer less than or equal to 10 because counter is 11. So that means the loop is finished. It exits and it moves on to the next part of your code. So if I just do again node for loop, you can see the counter starts at 0 because we've initialized the counter to be equal to 0. And then the condition and the iteration happens, and it loops through until counter is equal to 11, because that's now false. So this condition is false, so then it breaks and it stops. And you can do like a different things with for loops. So for example, we can count backwards. So we can just do let counter, let's just say equal to 5. And then we want to say counter is greater than or equal to 0. And then this time we will decrease counter by 1 each time. I'll just do that so we can see the difference, or maybe just call it counter 2. That's probably the simple thing to do. And then what this will do is it will now count backwards. So it will start off as counter is equal to 5. And then it will say, hey, is our counter greater than or equal to 0? Yes, counter is 5. So it is greater than or equal to 0. Let's do this console log or whatever we've got in the code. And then let's decrease counter by 1. So now counter is 4. The condition happens again, all the way until it's false. So when we get to the loop where counter is equal to 0, it will say, hey, is counter greater than or equal to 0? Yes, it is. So let's do console.log counter to 0. And then the iteration will happen. So it will do 0 minus 1. So now counter is equal to minus 1. So the condition happens. Is minus 1 greater than or equal to 0? No, that's false. So the loop finishes and it ends. And we can see that in the terminal here. So if I do, again, node for loop, what we can see down here is we've got our first counter, which was the first loop which I did. And then we've got our second one here, where it's counting from 0 to 10. And then we've got the for loop, which is sort of counting down. So from counter 2, 5, all the way down to 0. So I hope this video has sort of helped break down what's going on in the for loop and made things a little bit more clearer for you. If you've got any questions, just leave a comment and I will answer it as quick as I can. Thanks for watching.